A new car arrived today.
Really? I didn't know I was scheduled for a car today. What is it?
Nissan Versa?
The new one?
I think so. It says it's a 2020.
Oh, well, that's good.
Why?
Oh, well, it's because the old one looked like something you'd buy at an adult novelty store. What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today we have a very surprising review. Surprising in the sense that I found this car to be surprisingly competent and impressive, the 2020 Nissan Versa. Now, let's get the obvious out of the way first. The 2020 Versa is a lot better looking. It has the new V-Motion kind of front end that matches up with the rest of the Nissan lineup, including the brand new Sentra, and this is a massive improvement in the way the car looks. While the old Versa looked a lot like something your cat would scoot across the carpet, the new Versa looks, clean and modern. It's got sort of a subtle, aggressive look to it. It's a solid improvement in the way the car looks, and Nissan's design language is progressing rather well. Unlike, someone like Hyundai's design language, which is sort of dissolving at the bottom of your septic tank, Nissan's is evolving into sort of like an understated aggressiveness that I think looks really good. Of course, modern design means that it has a blacked out C-pillar that's fake, obviously, which is sort of like the automotive equivalent of a hydro flask with a lot of stickers on it.
And what do you call a water bottle now?
A hydro flask.
It's like my hydro flask here.
But other than that, the Versa's design is pretty solid overall, especially for a small car. The Versa is powered by a 1.6-liter four-cylinder that makes a staggering 122 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque. Wait, is that right? 122 horsepower out of 1.6 liters? That can't be right, can it? It's like what you get out of a 600cc motorcycle or a pressure washer. So 122 horsepower isn't a lot, but you don't really notice it. The Versa moves away from a stop pretty smartly. It doesn't leave you hanging. You only notice the lack of power when you're kind of like accelerating at speed or going up a hill or, kind of doing most of anything, but it doesn't leave you wanting in situations. If you're merging onto a freeway on-ramp, you might have to dig into the throttle a little bit, but it's not too bad. I'm gonna floor it. And yeah, we're barely breaking the speed limit now. That's a lot of sound and fury for 60 miles an hour. It's like the Versa's like, I can do it. I can do it.
I can make it.
Besides, is there anyone out there buying a Versa who's like surprised that it doesn't make a lot of power? Those 122 raging, stampeding horsepowers are mated to a CVT transmission that is admittedly a lot better than CVTs of the past. CVTs of the past were kind of whiny, buzzy, and they would just zing the RPM straight to the red line and just hold them there in a pretty terrible way. This one simulates shifts. It does it pretty convincingly. It's extremely smooth, and it's pretty well isolated too. The engine doesn't have like the most pleasing engine note, but it's pretty subdued, and the CVT goes about its business in a sort of unobtrusive way. So it's a pretty good example of a modern CVT transmission, especially making the most out of, those raging 122 horses. The main downside of this CVT transmission is that it's a little unsure of itself when pulling away from a stop. It's not quite sure if you want like some of the power, most of the power, a free brochure on Cialis, or if you want to actually get up and go. Other than that, it shifts pretty smartly, especially when moving slowly around town or even up to highway speeds. It almost mimics like a DSG transmission. There are no like real shift movements. It just sort of is in the next fake gear, so to speak, because obviously it doesn't have gears. But despite all that, there's one thing that the Versa does surprisingly well. In fact, as well or better than any other car in its class, and that's the way it drives. Right away, the number one thing that jumps out at you when you're driving the Versa is that it feels a lot more expensive than it is. It's a lot more sophisticated feeling than it actually is. And that's a great quality in an affordable car. It's pretty much exactly what you want in an affordable car. And that more expensive feeling, that sophistication, it extends to the way that the Versa drives. For a small car, the Versa's suspension handles road imperfections and challenges very well. The suspension is firm, but it's not too firm. It's supple enough that it's not going to scare away any of the Versa's, prospective demographics, the type of people that want a small, affordable car. They don't have sporting pretensions. We're on my handling road now, and the Versa is absorbing these bumps and impacts, especially the ones that sort of upset the car diagonally, where they're hitting like one corner of the car. And the Versa handles it really well. There's also a couple turns on here. I'm taking this turn at a reasonable rate of speed. Actually, not really. The Versa doesn't plow too terribly much. It's a very composed car. It's handling this road. It's not jostling me about. It's not causing a bunch of head toss. Now, it doesn't ride like the Lexus UX I had the other day. Other than the Corolla hatchback, I can't think of many small cars that could handle this type of bad road. That's a fairly significant dip, and the Versa's not really upset by it. For a small car with a short wheelbase, it's an impressive handler on that road. In regards to the way the Versa drives, there's really only two complaints, and they're coming from an enthusiast perspective, so take that with a grain of salt. If you're watching this video and you're a normal person and you're not a sociopathically insane enthusiast like, people like me, then you probably won't notice these things. But from an enthusiast perspective, there's only two things that really stick out to me that I dislike about the way the Versa drives or handles. First is the steering. It's fine to most people, but I feel like it weights up sort of unnaturally. It feels rubber bandy. There's kind of a bandiness to the steering, and it weights up as you turn off center, but it's kind of numb on center. And then at parking lot speeds, it's overly light. Now, I know that's not a complaint to most people, and even at speed, it's not really a complaint to most people, but I definitely notice it, along with the wind noise. There's some substantial wind noise, but again, small, affordable car, not really a concern. The steering's accurate enough, but the feel is just off for me a little bit. Not a deal breaker to most people by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not for me. It feels like it takes too much turn to get going. It needs to be a little faster at speed. The second demerit that I would give the car, who says demerit? Demerit. I mean, I am a teacher, but I'm not a teacher from like the 1930s. You got a demerit for your late work. The second demerit, that being said, would be the brake feel. I feel like the brake pedal's a little inconsistent, not inconsistent in performance, more just inconsistent in feel. It's a little mushy up top, and then it kind of gives you a little bit too much brake, a little bit more than you might have wanted. So I would say the brake feel is my other driving aspect of the car that I don't particularly like. I will say this though, for most people, those are massively outweighed by the way that this car handles. This car handles better than it has any right to, and it will make a lot of people very happy. It feels like a much more expensive car. Now, all that being considered, overall, this is a lot of car for $22,000. When you factor in the safety systems and the options, it gets very interesting. Also, I know some people will find it cheesy. I mean, technically, I'm an enthusiast. I should find it cheesy, but I like the flat bottom steering wheel. I know it's ridiculous in a car like this, but flat bottom steering wheels just look cool. Plus, when you're 6.5 feet tall, they provide you with a lot of legroom. I mean, guys, seriously, I'm 6.5 feet tall, and I've got plenty of room. The seat's not even all the way back. I could put the seat back even more if I wanted to. That's impressive.
Sure, the interior is mostly plastic, but it's got some soft touch points, and the overall design is actually really attractive. It looks really good. And an added bonus are these seats are extremely comfortable. Like, they're not quite as form-fitting and, as tight as sort of enthusiasts would like, but they're very comfortable, and they sort of complement this car's surprisingly good ride. If you opt for the SR model, and let's be honest, at 22 grand, why wouldn't you? You get Nissan's full Safety Shield 360 suite of safety features, which at this price is incredibly impressive. It includes auto braking with pedestrian detect, blind spot monitoring, rear brake assist, rear cross traffic alert,
lane departure warning, and auto high beams, which surprisingly don't suck. I hate auto high beams, and they work really well in this car. That is an insane amount of safety tech, and it's an enormous value in this price segment. As more and more automakers put compelling safety technology in lower and lower spec models, or lower tier models in their sort of model range hierarchy, I would say Nissan is at the top, leading the pack. I mean, this is a ton of safety technology in an extremely affordable car, and it's useful safety technology. One of the most impressive features of the Versa, I would say, in my opinion. You also get Nissan's Nissan Connect system, which they should just rename Gateway to Apple CarPlay, because that's all you're really going to want to use anyway. It is easy enough to navigate. I was able to pair my phone to it in like 2 seconds, but it's very slow to respond. It's like a narcoleptic sloth. So you just probably want to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but it does come with all the infotainment's features you'd expect, which at $22,000 is a pretty good value, to be honest with you. But automakers, you really have got to get a handle on these infotainment systems. I mean, come on, stop trying to out-Apple Apple and just either give us straight-up CarPlay with nothing else, or consult with Apple and Google. I don't know, whatever it takes, but come on, stop pretending that you can make smartphones. Now, speaking of screens, the Versa has a really nice one in the gauge cluster right ahead of the driver. It displays tons of useful information. I actually kept it in the sort of simulated analog tach mode, which I really liked. I thought it looked really cool. And it also displayed the mileage, like to empty in the middle of the tach. So that was my preferred setting. I thought it looked really good. But weirdly, Nissan kept the analog sort of regular speedometer to the right of this really attractive digital gauge cluster on the left. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's kind of like buying a new Xbox and getting 2 controllers and one of them is an abacus. Like, why is there an analog kind of blah speedo with not so great lighting at nighttime right next to this very crisp, pretty, brightly lit, I don't know if it's an LCD or TFT screen, I don't really care, it just looks really good. Why not just make the whole gauge cluster digital? You go from the center over to the left, why not just go the full thing? I don't understand that decision at all, because the screen looks great and the analog speedo, not so much. But overall, the interior of the Versa is a really nice place to be. We actually drove around in it as a family and we had just enough room. But as you can see, I can sit behind someone of average height. Now, Mrs. Jax was sitting there, so the seat isn't all the way back. This seat is all the way back, but there is a surprising amount of room back here, and that's after the Versa lost room. The old Versa, you know, the one that looked like, that one actually had even more space in the back. I don't really see how you would need it. This is an extremely roomy car for such a small footprint. Now, where did that back seat space go? Well, it went mostly to the front seats, which is understandable because I'm 6'6" and I have a very comfortable driving position in the Versa. And Hallie, at about 5'1", was able to sit behind me comfortably. And as you can see, Ella was able to sit behind Mrs. Jax. She's over 6 feet tall. Mrs. Jax is 5'9". So this car can accommodate a very large family. Even the steering wheel has kind of like a sporty flair to it, which I kind of like. The leather doesn't feel so great, but it's got like a flat bottom and, you know, it feels like a little bit of an upscale touch in a car like this. It might not be quite as nice as the Corolla hatchback's interior, but if I'm being honest, it's plenty good enough, and the back seat more than makes up for it, because the Corolla hatchback's interior was very, very nice for the price, but it had no back seat to speak of, especially not sitting behind me, unless you were going to remove someone's legs, you know, like literally from the waist down, just chop them straight off. Then maybe the Corolla hatchback could be for you. The Versa, you can be a human being and sit back here. Oh, an added bonus. The trunk is huge. So, should you buy a Nissan Versa if you are in the market for an affordable, small car and you have a hankering in buying one new? Well, the answer is yes, you should buy this Nissan Versa SR Edition. Now the base model Versa, maybe not. It doesn't come with a lot of the features, but to be honest with you, at just under 22 grand, this Versa comes with a ton of content, especially the safety content, which I think is important at this price range. Also, if you're considering looks, the Nissan Versa looks pretty much better than any other car in its class. The competition is not too stiff. You've got things like the Toyota Yaris that look like a koi fish that swallowed another koi fish that was pooping another koi fish out. So the Versa kind of wins in the looks department. The Versa also gets more than respectable gas mileage, averaging about 39 miles to gallon. I think it gets up to 40 on the highway, which is pretty darn good. It drives well, it has a cavernous interior, and it has a huge trunk. So it's pretty much a win-win all around. If you like this video, please consider dropping it a like and consider subscribing if you like mostly auto and moto related content. I am departing from that a little bit because today is actually a quarantine day and I'm at the park social distancing myself from everybody around me. Please consider following along on Instagram and even TikTok, where I post other content related to what I am doing, a little bit more behind the scenes stuff. But I'd love to have you guys join me there as well, because to be honest with you, I'm doing this because I love to communicate with other people who love these types of things, cars, motorcycles, and just all the cool community surrounding them. So if you'd like to follow along, please consider subscribing, please consider following on Instagram, and reach out and I'd love to connect with you, all right? Until the next video, whatever it might be and whenever it might be, ride safe, drive safe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace. Also, real talk, stay safe out there. Healthy, sanitize, social distancing, stay at home. We're gonna get through this. You're gonna get through this, I'm gonna get through this, we're all gonna get through this together. If we were going to give out a most improved award, it would definitely not go to the children who are making noise. The number of people that acknowledge that I'm filming something and then proceed to drive through the shot or get in the shot or talk to me, or a kid just went by and was like, YouTuber, and then started screaming. Yes, I am. And no, you're not helping. There's a car in the background. Why'd you have to leave the park that way? Couldn't have left the park by the other way that's like the exit way? Lane departure warning. I know. Went through a drive-through car wash yesterday to wash the Versa before my little photo shoot with it in my other location, and just overnight it's already covered in pollen. Pollen flows like rivers here in Georgia during the springtime. It's disgusting, but it's just the reality we live in. I can literally feel myself inhaling it right now. I can see it already accumulating on my GH5 like yellow snow. That has a completely different connotation now that I said that. Let's do it again.